Today, I'm in São Bernardo do Campo, São Paulo, and I'm here with Mozinho, right? Who is a very gentle dog here. Her owner filmed an unidentified flying object in Sacoma. And we're going to have a very special interview now, so stay tuned. Right after the intro, I'm here today with Samuel Kikuti, who filmed an object in broad daylight in Sacoma. Very interesting, on July 20th, 2025. We're going to talk to him now for a bit. He's going to tell us how that day was, right? That July 20th. How was that filming? Tell us more details.
So Edison Boaventura, on Sunday I went out. It was a beautiful day, just like today, a sunny day, right? I had things to do there in the afternoon. I left here around 3 o'clock in the afternoon from here to Sacoma. It's about 13 kilometers away, right? That's when, near the Anchieta Highway Police, I started to see a spot in the sky. And I thought a bird, right, or a plane, I don't know. When I was already in that urban area, I realized it was a little above the treetops, and it already had a peculiar shape which looked like, a disc anyway. And until we know what it is and can say for sure, we grab our phone, right? I started filming while driving, tried to find its location, zoomed in, and decided to check it later. And then when I got to the end of the route, I replayed the video and thought, that's curious, right? The lights changing color, the shape, right? It didn't look like parachutes. I didn't even really know what those objects could be. And then I posted it, right? I posted it, sent it to some channels that didn't get back to me, posted it on Twitter, and some people started sharing that image.
It started blowing up on the internet.
There was someone that even another friend said, hey, there's a video of you going around in Germany, but nobody knows who it is. It was filmed really badly, probably because the person just copied their own screen, right? From the phone that I posted on stories, and the resolution was terrible. Now, if you watch the video, even with good quality, you can notice details that usually, because it was filmed with a phone, people say, oh, but it's never a good phone. I said, guys,
Which phone did you use?
I was using the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and I even tell people, me with my 12 Pro Max, I never managed to get a high-resolution image of the moon, right? It always looks kind of blurry, kind of smudged, right? So it's an object that's still moving and you're inside a vehicle. I thought the image actually turned out pretty good for that situation, right? And
describe for us visually what the shape of this object was like, how it behaved.
Look, visually I saw it very small. It looked like a more elongated dot. And I even thought about those Sunday balloons shaped like cigars, those things. But at the time, I noticed that it didn't make those balloon-like movements, I even looked around to see if there were other objects. Because usually sometimes balloons come in pairs or in threes, fours, right? I don't know. And its movement was at first a straight line. But since I was making some turns, I thought it had a slight curve to the right and then one to the left. He seemed to be descending, right? Descending. I even marked a few points. So, for example, in the video, when I went to do an analysis, I said, look, he appeared to me at this certain point, and when I stopped filming, I saw him at another point. So I was able to roughly calculate a straight line, a line that he was following, and then I came to some conclusions afterwards anyway.
It was in the direction of the airport. He
was leaving the East Zone, around the East Zone, near Villa Prudente, right, a little before Mucam. And then he was heading towards Villa Mariana, which is a busy part of the city, right? And
did you shoot from Sacoma?
From Sacoma, from the urban part of Anchieta. And later, when people started speculating about what it was, right? We always say it could be an unidentified flying object, anything we don't know, right? It's made by humans, not some alien artificial intelligence, right? And then someone started talking about parachute balloons. And then I said, I'm going to start looking for videos on the internet about this topic. I found some pretty similar images, but we still noticed the lines were missing, right? And the counterweight, since parachutes require one to open properly,
Yes, and there's that descending movement, right? Because
Incredibly, the parachute balloon doesn't have a lot of swinging movement unless it's windy that day. I watched other videos and didn't see that movement, right? Still, the shape is quite unusual and really different. They're typically open at the top, allowing air to flow in from below and out, which keeps it stable. And so it can go down, then it stays. I'm not sure if the idea is to glide. I'm not familiar with these balloon parachutes. And another thing we noticed that day is that it could be something carried by the wind, maybe a pool, a tarp, any object, right? That's when I began researching.
things like balloons and airplanes are completely ruled out because
Yeah, balloon, that was even considered. I'm not one of those people who see even a rather absurd comment and say, calm down. I think it's worth us taking a look, right? To find out what it is. Balloon caps came up, water tank lids.
water tank lid, it's leaving.
No chance, it's leaving. It has to be stable. Or the guy made a really good water tank lid and deserves congratulations for.
Creativity. That person is truly creative. And
Then came ball pits, circus tent, circus tent. I also ruled it out because of the structure. It has a metal structure, right? And it has nothing to do with what was on that object. But there was also the priest's ball balloon, which they call the priest's ball balloon. It has a rounded shape, but on top it's like this slightly a peak. It looks like an old spinning top we used to see, right? A shape like this on top. And then the guy said, look, I'm a kite flyer. I can cut balloons. I grew up Xanato, making an angle with the line, and it goes through easily. I was just cutting the tip of the balloon. I said, man,
that's another really big creativity for me, right?
because maybe the kite in the sky, when you make a pulling movement, it bends. Okay, you can probably get it through, just make a precise cut. The glue will be fine. Nowadays, we know it's forbidden and all, but people still manage to cut some objects. They said it could be the top of the balloon that came loose and started coming down, right? Our idea was to check in that area if anyone had seen it, if any building might have security cameras, if other people had filmed it. Because the purpose of the video wasn't to say, oh, we're claiming it was a flying object.
Unidentified?
Unidentified?
By por implanto, huh? No.
Identified, of extraterrestrial origin, for example. But maybe someone else has seen it? From another angle, right? Or said it fell in my garage, right? We begin to learn, since studying ufology is important. I'm not a ufologist, are you? But I think it's about handling these new arguments that keep coming up, right? For us, like balloon parachutes, ball pits, inflatable flying things, star balloons, right? We saw there are a lot of objects that are theoretically new that we end up confusing with extraterrestrial objects, right? Currently, no resolution has been reached. Look,
to add to the situation, I got in touch with the ballooning people just to find out if they had released any balloons with parachutes, right? And so far, nothing, right? No one said anything. And I also talked to a couple who were there on the same avenue you were, and they saw this phenomenon too. They didn't get to film the object, but they observed it and described it the same way, right? That object you filmed. That's just how it is, right? We're still under investigation and we're studying to see what it's about. That object for now is an unidentified flying object because we haven't found any balloonist, right? Or anyone who had that artifact fall in their house in case it's a conventional artifact. I wanted to ask you something else. Is that right? Throughout your life, have you ever seen any other unidentified flying object, whether it was luminous or had these characteristics?
look, with conviction, then no. People might confidently say, oh, maybe I saw that. If I hadn't filmed this object last time, I'd just be saying, I think I filmed something. It's strong enough that you could suddenly think it might be, right? And then thanks to that occasion, I managed to record another one. It was here, near this place too, right? Because later, if you want to show what the landscape looks like here, you can see a lot, right? We
could go out there now, take a quick look. Then you tell me, okay, we'll talk from there. So Samuel, we're here on the terrace, right? It's a really panoramic view here. What happened here?
It was about 9 at night when traffic from Kongonhas airport usually begins to slow down, right? I'm always here because I watch the stars, photograph the moon, and capture any events. And it's more or less in that area, right where I'm pointing. Over there. What is that over there, more or less there? On the right side is Kongona's airport, and here, more to the left, is already the Diadema area. And I saw an object passing by. It was very fast, but making irregular movements, right? Yeah, so it would move, come over here, turn around, go up there, come down, make sudden movements, a white light. And I said, man, to leave Kongonhas and get close to Diadema in 2 seconds. What kind of drone is that, right? That's it.
What year was that?
2000 and I think 9, 10, around that year. I don't remember exactly. And there weren't that many drones back then, right? I called Claudio, who was downstairs, and told him to come up. I wasn't sure whether to grab my phone, film Just Watch, or call him as a witness. Then,
By the time he got there.
here, calmly he arrived. He stood right here next to me and started watching. And I said, see, there you go, I told you. Then he waited for all that wind to pass. The light went much farther away and came down. It looked like it came down over there, towards those mountains by the Rodoanel. And I said, see, what do you think? He said, it's a drone. I said, man, a drone that fast? I don't think so. To be a drone. And also with very unusual movements, because drones back then, except for today's FPVs, didn't move like that. Those are the ones who move a lot following the car. There's already technology for that today. They even wear goggles. Back then, they could have had it too. But what amazed me was the speed and also the altitude, because if you consider the altitude, it must have been above the airplane routes. So I found it to be a very curious object, something I couldn't really explain. We didn't discuss this case since you have no photo or evidence, right?
Let's go inside now. The sun is roasting us out here, right? And there's Ozinho show Mozinho here. Look, now it's Mozo, and we're going inside. He's going to tell me a story now that back in the Varginha days, he was in São Tomé das Letras and made a quick stop in Três Corações, Minas Gerais. He's going to tell us inside. Come with me. So, tell me that story you were telling me a little earlier about January 1996. You were in São Tomé das Letras, and then you heard about the buzz in Varginha and went to Três Corações. Well,
yeah, back then there wasn't even internet or global positioning system for us to find our way, right? At that time, I hadn't arrived in São Tomé das Letras yet, since we didn't know the way. So we took a bus to São Lourenço. From São Lourenço, it went through Varginha, and we went to Três Corações, which was the gateway. In Três Corações, we saw a lot of activity in the city because people were talking about something that happened, something showed up. They didn't know if it was the Chupacabra, but something happened there near Varginha. And that ESA, which I think was the army, right? They were taking care of the situation there. There were a lot of convoys, cars, and trucks. And I, very interested in this subject, said, let's watch, because the bus station is right next to where ESA is. Afterwards, we went there as reporters, and others began arriving, causing some movement. And I remember that I said I need to take a picture. Then I got ready to take a picture when a soldier approached. I have the photo and will send it to you later. And he said, man, you guys have to leave here now because there's an operation going on here. I don't know what, blah, blah, blah. And you have to leave here. And obviously,
they forbade it. You can't stay.
You can't stay here. It's an avenue and has been for years. But I remember that if it's still like this today, I remember it was a really big avenue with lots of trees. Like there are no shops, nothing. And there at the end, is there a big gate where ESA is? And it was from there that all this movement was happening back and forth. And if I'm not mistaken, it was vacation time, right? Back then I worked in January, but I think I was still on vacation. So that's why we were still making those trips through the countryside of Minas Gerais, right? And it was really like after we came back that we saw through Fantastico and other channels the impact of the case, because there you end up not really paying much attention.
Do you remember any news you saw like that from Globo or any newspaper? What did you see? What were they reporting?
I remember very well the faces of the girls describing how it happened. I remember her showing the position he was in the corner of the wall, the sticky skin and everything else. But the most curious part of the story was that I remember one. I don't know if it was live, some global profile, an aerial image showing what looked like a forest.
Like a news program, not a live broadcast?
That goes live saying that. And this was hours after it happened, or the following days. I don't remember what had happened there. I'm not sure if I watched it here or alone. Back in Minas, it was an aerial image showing a forest. And they were saying, look, the bodies, probable bodies, are being rescued from the rural area. Something like that. I remember a dirt road going by and two soldiers carrying a body on a stretcher with something white on top. A cloth, something like that. They were heading to the road to meet those convoys, which were from the ESA. Back then, I wondered, what could it be? Was it just that one, another, or an accident? What could that have been, right? Because while some people said it was a chupacabra, that it could be an animal living in the middle of the forest. Then another news report comes out making it clear. We remember those cases from Rojo where a spaceship crashes and then after that you find bodies scattered around the area. We began to think it was that in this case. I remember that news report well. And sometime later, I remember very well one of the girls saying that officers dressed in black came looking. And suits, right? Suits, is that it? And they told her never to talk about this subject again and completely forbade her from mentioning it.
To them, but
That happened. They didn't accept it, correct? I remember something like that. So it had a lot of repercussion at that time, right? I remember it very well, and
besides those cases, right? Did you have any other observations around here and so on? You travel a lot too, right? I heard that you've already traveled to Egypt, right? To Peru, right? Machu Picchu, Nazca, those places. And so, has your interest in ufology and these subjects always been present in your life?
always. I think that everything when we're kids is influenced by some kind of thing you get as a gift. Or maybe, I don't know, through some kind of spiritual inspiration. I don't know. But I remember the time when I got a telescope, a little orange telescope, really small. And then I made a club here on the street where I gathered the boys and we made a little club which was for astronomical observations. Each had their own membership card and went home. We studied the planets, you know. At that time, Pluto was still considered a planet. We included all of that. I had gotten an atlas about the universe, so I would teach the kids, show them pictures, because back then you didn't have planets in magazines. If I'm not mistaken, a magazine called Super Interessante covered these subjects and their repercussions. So we would end up talking about it and spend the night keeping watch, so we observed the sky a lot. And since that time, I've had this habit, as I'm showing you, right? If I'm looking for a place to live, I look for somewhere with a view where I can observe phenomena. When big events happened, I would talk about them. When I managed to save up some money and set it aside so I can take some trips, I'm going to look for places that remind me of that I can connect with this side that we long for so much. I just don't think it's possible we're alone in the universe or lack any connection, right? I think there must be other civilizations out there. The world is huge, right? The universe, right? That's when I visited Nazca, saw the Nazca lines, Machu Picchu, and Egypt. And in Egypt, you find some really unbelievable things. Like we went to a temple, just to tell you quickly, that we saw a pharaoh, and there's a zoomed in image of a sperm cell on the wall. Yeah, you who also visited Egypt must have seen that image. It's something that everyone looks at and says, man, how is that possible? What kind of microscopy did they have back then to see a sperm cell with such perfection, right? You can already see the technology was different. And then other places in Brazil, like Serra da Capivara, where you have contact with the first American man here, and there are also very different figures.
Cave paintings, well,
Fascinating cave paintings you may now recognize. Hidden beings, right? Cool, you can see them.
gods, right? Astronauts, the gods.
You know, it has always existed. I think this spark in the minds of humans, right? So These are things that I prefer to travel to this kind of place rather than travel to a beach. I like the beach too, of course, but if I have the chance to visit these places, for me it's more touching, it's more vibrant. For me, it has a deeper meaning.
So we really wanted to thank Samuka, right? Samuel Kikuchi, we're going to show the images one more time, right? That were taken by him here in Sakoma. And Samuel, thank you for your statement. And it's adding to the research we're conducting. We don't know what it is. So far, nothing has shown up. If it's a balloon, if it's something explainable, the people responsible for it haven't come forward yet. And for now, the case remains as an unidentified flying object in Sao Paulo, in Sakoma. Just giving.
One more. Yes, you can. Besides this episode that I managed to record, there was another one that happened in January when I was with my family. My aunt died on December 7th. We went to bury her in Minas Gerais in Passos near Serra da Canastra. And on the road we saw it. There were 4 of us, me, my mother, and my 2 cousins. We saw 2 objects hovering over a water tower. So, I just wanted to let you know, because if someone happens to know about this, it was a very curious object. We thought they were 2 airplanes frozen in the air, but said they didn't look like airplanes.
They stood frozen in the air, unmoving.
And huge, right above the city of Aguay. I visited several ufology websites and commented, guys, did you see it? And back then, there was a lot of talk about some UFOs that appeared in a city in Minas Gerais. It starts with U. Not sure if it's Umurama or something else.
Uruana.
Uruana, they were talking a lot about that. I commented on those sites, hoping others had seen it too. It was around December 7th or 8th, 2024. That was an image.
That's it. If anyone saw it, let us know. It's interesting. It will be gathering information about this event that Samuel, along with his family, witnessed. So once again, thank you. Leave your comments. What do you think it is? If you also saw this object in the mother sack, leave your comments below. And see you in the next video podcast live with Edison Boaventura. Thanks, everyone.